Good evening. Today is March 9th. As Victor was expecting yesterday, it was a good day for the markets. A
Very
very,
good day.
a very good day indeed, as
But
the
but
House plans to pass the COVID bill tomorrow.
it had a very surprising close. It, it went down about 1% at the close.
Right. It traded up 70 points since the close yesterday and
Hmm.
tested 3,900 level a few times, but
Yes,
then sold off 30 points at the end of the day. But it still closed up 1.3%.
3,900 will be erased by the end of the week. It
Oh,
won't hold going to new highs, but it might take a little while.
Nasdaq had an amazing day, up almost 4%,
Hmm.
as Tesla has rebounded 20%. And ARK Innovation ETF was up over 10%. So I guess they don't owe enough Tesla. The surprise of the day was the GME stock was up over 26% after yesterday's 40% rally. What's surprising is that GME usually goes down on days like today, but not today. It's not now trading at $250 and probably will also go to its highs with the market. Bitcoin was up as well, 54,000, and
Yes,
even
it requited the Soji level at 50
right.
thousand and it's on its way.
It's probably on its way to new highs as well, 60,000 as the
As
market.
Andy Aiken was telling us, we should get into it about 40 at 20,000. We should have listened to him.
We should have. But I stay away from things that I don't understand. Plus, the whole complexity of exchanges. It seems that if we follow your market calls, one could make just as much money in S&P 500,
Oh,
not more.
I wish that were true. Thanks for saying it. Good to have a supporter. Yeah, it was a unusual day.
Right.
Bonds went through the roof out of the clear blue sky. I guess the auctions were good. First auction was good, and one day it went up more than it was down in the previous 7 days. So really went up 2 points today. One of the biggest rises in the past month. So it was an unusual day in that the technology was good. Then it was a very woke day, of course, and of course that's why everything was helping the the idea that we need more progressive, more government, which is very good. So the market and gold was up, and woke was up. So we had was a change in the habitats today. Bonds stopped going down, gold stopped going down, technology stopped going down. We had a very unsatisfactory close. I wonder what that foretold. Usually it's very bullish, but after a big up day like this, it's anyone's game.
There is a funny tidbit in news that apparently we have men's shortage because women have been graduating from college in 30 plus percentage greater numbers than men. So now for every four women with college degrees of marriage age, there are only three guys with college degrees. So
So
women
what
have to now marry down as opposed to marry up as before.
haven't you heard about that in some of the colleges like North Carolina and Miami that 10 girls go out with one boy because they're so rare. They all drop out
Right?
before their senior. What's it like in Russia? Are the sex ratios staying the same? or
In
women.
Russia, in the college, it depends on the college. In Russia, there was a huge diversity between colleges. If you go for engineering degree, there will be 2 girls in a class of 20. If you go for humanities, it will be in reverse. But overall, I think more women are going to college in Russia as well.
The women are living a lot longer than the men, about
Right.
10 years longer. Does that apply to transplants like yourself? You have a life expectancy of 110?
Well, my grandmother lived till 94. My
That's good.
grandfather lived till 89. His sisters are still alive at 94 and never been to a doctor. So my thing is go to doctors less, work outdoors, garden, do whatever. Just don't sit in front of the computer and eat bonbons. Garden a lot. They go outdoors all the time. They don't snack. They work hard their whole life.
Well, aside from my lucky prediction, the best thing that I said today was I've been reading the biographies of Brahms and Verdi and Beethoven, and strangely enough, they all said that the key to their creative powers was a walk, a deep walk in the forest, in the Vienna forest. Verdi uh, loved to garden. Sometimes when he got into his 60s, he spent 8 years gardening and taking care of his acre. He had one of the largest land holdings in Italy. I thought that when there are cross currents of change in habitat, that maybe we turn to someone who was timeless, the greatest checker player. I want to dispel the notion, one of the greatest fallacies that people have, the proverb, he played checkers and I played chess, as if checkers was not a difficult thing. Actually, checkers is a, a binary game. You can either move forward or you can jump over a person. And in that sense, it's very much like electrical circuits. A lot of the checker moves are exactly like the additions and subtractions and their arithmetic computations in a computer. And there's tremendous thought in checkers. A good checker player sometimes thinks 90 moves ahead. Because it's so simple, it's very difficult. The greatest checker player, a man named Marion Tinsley, who's a mathematics professor, and it took a computer 10 years, it took 5 computers 10 years to get to a point where they could draw with him. Much, much longer and much more even than the chess computers, which can beat anybody. In any case, Tom Wistful had a million. He came. I had the pleasure of taking lessons from him for 25 years. And every week he came to my office. And one of the things he did was to produce proverbs that were appropriate, that would be good for life, checkers, and chess. And eventually he produced 10,000 proverbs, which I am the owner of. And he had produced 22 books. And he always said that the book he was writing for me was going to be his best book. He kept books for the chemical bank, and then he started. Uh, his boss liked to play checkers with him, Then he joined the Navy. And when he came to my office, he'd always say the same thing. Victor, he'd look at my wife. I have a very perfect wife, in case you don't know it, but he'd look at her and he'd say, Victor, the one thing I'm most unhappy about, the only thing I'm unhappy about in my life is that I didn't marry a girl like Susan. And then and he'd shake his head. He said, but then again, if I had married her, I wouldn't have written any books. Uh, checker players were like that. They're uh, very rarely do they get married. Uh, and I asked them, why is that? Well, it's because they get so involved in checkers, and it's like Brahms and Beethoven. They love women, but Beethoven spent the last few years of his life. He always fell in love with his students, but his love was always unrequited. Either the women were too aristocratic for him, or they were too young for him, or often they were married. But he spent his his romantic life in the last 5 years in Brussels. Anyway, they get so the one person they call her the immortal beloved. He and she were going to get married, as he was with a few people. Of course, then the fathers of the bride would put the kibosh on it. But I get back to the point that, for example, with Brahms, he got engaged and he exchanged rings with his fiancee, but then he told her that, I'm going to be writing music and I can't be channeled. I have to be free. And she took the hint, and they never saw her again. He never saw each other. And that's how the checker players are. I once asked Tom, how come it is that the checker players don't get married? He says, well, every checker player is, as soon as he gets married on his honeymoon, he's talking on the phone 11 to 15, 23 to 18, 8 to 11, and the wife thinks he's a bookie because they're talking numbers. But anyway, tomorrow I'll give you some of his proverbs, but a lot of them are so relevant for the stock market. I have quite a few of them, or maybe 2% of them in my book. But one of the things that he always said, moves that disturb your position the least disturb your opponent the most. And then another thing which I think is very relevant for market people, for our listeners, when it looks like your opponent has given you an easy move, a trap, says remember the story of the spider and the fly, because invariably that's when when it looks the best, that's when you have to be the most wary. And that was today. The market dropped 25 points in 5 minutes. It stayed up the whole day. It's going up. Just when it looks the best, that's when it's the worst. But we shall see tomorrow with this change in habitat, or with the bonds. We had a green day today, but it was a very green day. It was one of the It was almost a Baron Coleman day with everything up. Okay, tomorrow we'll talk about some of the other timeless wisdom of Tom Whistle. He's a great man, great man. He always wore a hat, like me, and he had correspondence with 50, 100 people who lived in Bensonhurst in the Brooklyn area. Never liked to eat in restaurants because they'd ask him to take off his hat. He didn't want to take off his hat.
Victor, what do you do in a restaurant? Do you take off your hat, or you just only go to places that let you keep it on?
You know, the one good thing about restaurants is that they're so hungry for business now that they
Yeah.
don't dare to ask a person to take off their hat. The only place I was asked to take off my hat was the 21 Club in New York, but most of them know me. The hat is a very valuable thing for me. I have 100 uses for it. If I see a pretty girl, I want to show my appreciation like yourself. I'll take off my hat and salute her. If I want water, I put some water in my hat. No one ever forgets me because of my hat.
Right.
It's great for hailing a taxi cab.
And by the way, just because you mentioned the outside walks, Tolstoy, the famous Russian writer, also used to love the outdoors, and he spent most of his time outside of the city and loved the outdoor walks and working together with the peasants. So that helped him, I guess, as well to write. And one funny anecdote about him, he hated Shakespeare.
Gilbert was like that. Gilbert thought that he compared very well to Shakespeare. It's funny, the Tolstoy's son became the biographer of my hero, Aubrey Maturin, who's Jack Aubrey, who's the hero of the Patrick O'Brien canon. I recommend that when people ask me what books they should read, several people I knew and respected a lot told me, I just finished reading the 21 volumes of Patrick O'Brien for the 5th time through. And I couldn't understand how they couldn't. In any case, Tolstoy and Patrick O'Brien had a interesting connection, and Tolstoy wrote a biography of him. All right, I'll have a lot of proverbs prepared for tomorrow.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you. Thank you very much, Miss Elena.
Thank you. Have a good night.